The Assistant Chief Education Program, Election Day Administration. This is going to cover a lot of things. Election Day Administration addresses three main categories. Activities the chief or an assistant chief are responsible for on Election Day. Paperwork and Election Day forms you may need to know, or at least know that you have. And rotating officers of election, educating officers of election, and educating assistant chiefs and evaluating EOs. To promote the ability of the chief to keep an eye on everything, we try to keep the assigned activities of the chief to a minimum. With the exception of administering the oath, most of those can be delegated. The officer of election oath is administered by the chief, and every EO should sign the oath form. The chief is the one who must administer the oath because the chief will have been sworn in the day before. The signature page for the oath is found in the Election Day binder that the chief picks up. Every hour, the chief should complete a reconciliation. This process involves getting the checked-in voter count from the poll pads, the public count from the scanner, and the three numbers provided by the ballot officer: the ballots issued, the number of spoiled ballots, and the number of provisional ballots. To help get an apples-to-apples comparison, it can be useful to follow a voter from the poll books, where you get the count, to the ballot table, where you get the three numbers, all the way to the scanner, where you get another count, while trying to ensure that all the other voters in the room get processed out in the order they arrived in. It can be hard to do on a busy election, so you may have to fudge it a bit to adjust for voters who didn't move through at the same pace as the voter you were following. Getting a count at a slow interval is a big help if possible. The hourly reconciliation form is done every hour, and it helps the chief make sure that things are going according to plan in the polling place. You subtract the spoiled and provisionals from the ballots issued to get the ballot total from the ballot table. The poll pad total, the ballot table total, and the scanner total should all be the same number. You call the checked-in numbers on the poll book count at 9 a.m., at 1 p.m., and at 4 p.m. You generally will not have a manual count from the scanner unless you had to use the emergency ballot bin. This form is also in the Election Day binder. There are two forms used for ballot tracking during the day. These are not the chief's responsibilities directly, but they are key to the hourly reconciliation process. The ballot record report is used to keep track of how many packets of ballots were opened, how many ballots were in each packet, and how many spoiled and provisional ballots were issued by the ballot officer. The ballot tally sheet is used to keep track of the total number of ballots the ballot officer issues. At the top of the ballot record report should be entered the total number of ballots received, and for each ballot package that is opened, you enter the count of the ballots in the package. This, of course, implies that you must count the ballots in each package that is opened. It should be 100. Many times it is. Sometimes it's not. Spoiled and provisional ballots issued are tracked at the bottom. The ballot tally sheet is evolving, and some precincts use their own version of this sheet, but the bottom line is this is the sheet that the ballot officer uses to count the total number of ballots they issue. For every ballot issued, they keep count on the ballot tally sheet. Of course, this will include ballots that were issued to replace spoiled ballots, ballots that were issued for provisional ballots. So there will typically be more ballots counted on the ballot tally sheet than there will be ballots on the scanner or even checked in on the poll pad. If you've got too many ballots on the ballot tally sheet, usually you can flip it over and continue your count there. If you are doing multiple ballot styles in your polling place, then you should have separate tally sheets for each ballot style. In the Election Day binder is a notebook with lined paper in it. This is the Election Day log. It's the chief's log. The chief or their designee should use this log to capture unexpected events or problems that they encountered. Timestamps may be helpful here. ideas they have for improvements, actions that they have taken which are out of the ordinary. In other words, for example, they called for more ballots. The log does not take the place of the incident report form. So if you have an incident that requires the use of the incident report form, complete that form. You may note it also in the log. Logs are reviewed after an election by the registrar's office and the electoral board. What is written here matters. You might, at the end of the day, want to take a picture of the chief's log if you've captured some ideas that will be helpful to you in planning the next election. The incident report form is used to record an injury, accident, death, illness, and other events, such as voter altercations. This was mentioned on the previous slide as something that you may have to fill in during the day. The chief should use their judgment as to whether a simultaneous call should be made to the registrar. As a very general guide, if you have a death in your precinct, please call the registrar. But if you have a voter who just needs a Band-Aid, probably doesn't need a call in to the registrar. Fill in the form as completely as you can. This form is found in the Election Day binder. The Mom Threats Report is so rarely used, if ever, that it needs mention here just so you know to look for it in the Election Day binder. A special kind of incident is a bomb threat, and this has its own form. Fill in the form as completely as you can. For a called-in threat, this form can help you collect useful information. I hope you never need to see it. In the file box, which has hanging folders and lots of other form pads in it, you'll find Provisional Reason Number 5 form. When a voter is on the poll pad as already having voted, you use this form when processing the provisional. So the Provisional Reason Number 5, you'll do a regular provisional envelope, and you'll have the voter vote provisionally. But in addition to that, you will also fill in this form. This form enables you to capture any information you can, which might indicate that your team mistakenly checked in someone else as this voter, such as when junior is checked in, but you should have checked in senior, or two people with similar names are checked in. It's not uncommon that EOs will have, oh yeah, we did such and such so-and-so earlier. Information like that can be very useful to the electoral board in considering the provisional vote to determine if this vote should be allowed to be counted and to make sure that someone is not voting twice. The provisional log summary on this page and the provisional ballot log on the following page are two vital components of record keeping with the provisional process. This form summarizes the types of provisional votes by type. This is and should remain attached to the exterior of envelope A. 1A, that is. The provisional ballot log is where you duplicate information from your provisional envelopes into this log. The log is used by the electoral board and by anyone who's watching the electoral board go through the process of reviewing provisional votes. Number your provisional envelopes sequentially on the envelope and in the log. Number the log pages. At the end of the day, fill in the total page numbers. So page X of Y, fill in the Y at the end of the day. Ensure your log entries are complete and accurate, that you're reflecting the same information that's on the provisional ballot envelopes. These pages come from a pre-printed pad. Use as many as you need. And they all go in envelope 8 at the end of the day. They go in envelope 8 because envelope 8 is an envelope that we can open. It doesn't have to be delivered directly to the clerk of the court. And the provisional ballot log needs to be opened, duplicated, and reviewed before we can begin work the day following the election. We may or may not keep having this form, but there is a no provisional certification form that can be used in the extremely unlikely event that you have no provisionals. This form is used to certify that fact so that you don't have to waste envelope 1A. Envelope 1A has spaces on it where a number of pieces of information are required to be entered about your provisional voting. And envelopes are much more expensive than pieces of paper, so we don't want to waste them if we don't have to. But it's, as mentioned before, we're seeing a lot more provisionals these days. It's unlikely you'll ever need this form. The death of a registered voter form is used when a voter wants to report a death, usually of a spouse or a parent, so that that person will be taken off of the rolls. Note that the person reporting may still be grieving, and handle them accordingly. This form is found in the file box with hanging folders, and the completed form goes in envelope number 8. Voters who come in carrying their absentee ballot, or voters who come in without an absentee ballot who have to vote provisionally, may wonder why they keep getting absentee ballots when they haven't requested new ones. They may or may not remember that they checked a box online that said they wanted to be on the permanent absentee ballot list. This is an opportunity to give these voters the request for removal from permanent absentee list form. This happened a lot during COVID. People signed up when they didn't want to have to go in to vote, and they've simply forgotten what happened. Having them complete this form and putting it in envelope 8 when they're done will ensure that they don't get absentee ballots sent automatically to them in the future. The affirmation of eligibility form, if you look at it closely, shows all the hallmarks of being designed by a committee. It goes all over the place because it's used for a couple of distinct purposes. One of those is when voters are shown as inactive on the poll pads. Another purpose is when voters are challenged, which you may never have seen in a polling place as not being valid voters for that polling place. This form is found in the file box with hanging folders, and the completed form goes in envelope 8. There are instructions on the form of how to use it. When completing the affirmation of eligibility form, most of the time you're using it for the voter shown as inactive case, and you'll check box A on the front and have the voter complete section B on the back. In the rare case of a challenge, the challenger completes part of section A on the front. A challenged voter who completes and signs section B gets to vote a regular ballot unless some other circumstance causes them to have to be provisional. So just being challenged doesn't mean you have to vote provisionally. The voter complaint form is for HAVA, Help America Vote Act, related complaints, and comes with 2 pages of instructions that precede the form. The voters take this away and file it themselves. This is found in the file box with hanging folders. So if you have a voter who wants to complain, this is what you give them. One of your most important activities of the day, not that any of them are unimportant, is results reporting. And there are 4 slides we have all about this. There are 3 forms used for results reporting: Statement of Results Copy Number 1, Statement of Results Copy Number 2, which are not quite identical, and the printed return sheet. All of these are found in the Election Day binder. SOR number 1 and SOR number 2 go in envelope 2 when complete. The printed return sheet goes in envelope 2A. The printed return sheet is generally printed on yellow paper. All of these require the signatures of all of the EOs and all of the assistants and the chief. Each of these 3 forms has slightly different materials attached or stapled to it. The 2 statements of results have comparable tapes, but only SOR number 1 has the ballot record report attached to it. The 2 statement of results should be completed by EOs representing the 2 parties, and they should be done separately. They should complete their results and resolve any discrepancies. An assistant chief or the chief can oversee that process, but the actual completing of the results should be done by 2 separate EOs. A table should be set aside for the arts and crafts project of cutting and attaching the tapes in the right sequence, as well as completing the forms. Here are samples of the statement of results forms. What is attached is slightly different. Each of these forms continue and have a second page. The printed return sheet is very different from the statement of results, but it still requires having a copy of the scanner results report be attached to it. And again, this is a sheet that all officers of election must sign, including the chiefs and assistants. Working with poll watchers. Poll watchers should not be interacting with officers of election or voters. They should be communicating with the chief, or if the chief tells them, the chief or the assistant. Your willingness to hear from them should be made clear at the beginning of their shift. Poll watchers who are not following the rules should be redirected. If they persist, they should be warned. If they continue to persist, a majority of the EOs in the polling place can vote to require them to remain outside of the 40-foot line. If they are registered in your precinct, they can still come in to vote. By law, if the poll watcher has a complaint about their ability to hear or see the process, they must accept the chief's decision on the matter or immediately appeal the decision to the registrar or the electoral board. The vast majority of poll watchers will behave splendidly if they feel they are being heard. Sometimes they can be a real asset, another pair of eyes helping to make sure that things happen properly in the polling place. Officer of Election Evaluation. EOs and assistant chiefs are evaluated by their chief after each election. The chief may solicit input from the assistant chiefs in evaluating the EOs. Evaluations are distributed in the Election Day binder and sent out in an electronic fillable format and are to be returned either in hard copy or in email ASAP after the election, but in any case within 2 weeks. Evaluations record not only the skills an EO has in various polling place roles, but also whether they might be good candidates to become an assistant chief, or in the case of an assistant, ready to be a chief. The chief also has the opportunity to indicate that they do not want the EO assigned to them again because of deficiencies in the polling place. Here's a copy of the EO evaluation form. Give thought to the ratings for each EO. Watch out for grade inflation. It is very unlikely that all of the officers of election are outstanding in every activity. The comments should offer a snapshot of the pros and cons of this EO with examples of why this is so. Not acceptable behaviors definitely should be discussed in the comments. Not applicable role proficiencies mean the EO did not do or has not done that particular job. It's not an indictment against them, but if you didn't assign them to work as the ballot officer, then there's no reason to try to give them a grade at that job. Rotating officers of election through different jobs in the precinct. During the day, it is a good practice to move EOs around to different job assignments. There are a lot of factors to consider in this, including the knowledge, education, experience of the EOs, as well as their physical capabilities. You may find it useful to not move all of the EOs at the same time. For example, leaving 1 or 2 check-in EOs in place for 15 to 30 minutes before you rotate them enables them to mentor a fresh EO just assigned to the poll pad. Keep track where the EOs have worked. Try to give everyone a chance everywhere. Take note of how confident EOs are about their job assignment. Some may need on-the-job education or refresher education to be comfortable in a role. Pay attention to what they're telling you as they move into a position. It is understood that not all EOs can do all jobs, either through physical limitations or training limitations or simple capability limitations. On the other hand, no job in the polling place should have only one EO who can do it. Be prepared for the day that EO is not available. It has been noted before that one of the chief's jobs before an election is to make sure that all the officers of election have the education they need. Job rotation is a great way to improve the education of your EOs in the polling place, particularly if you can pair them with an experienced EO who can show them the ropes. The chief or an assistant may need to provide an EO with coaching to help them perform their job. When an EO makes mistakes or does the wrong thing, that is always a teaching moment, sometimes not only for the EO directly involved. Educating assistant chiefs. Great chiefs don't just magically happen. Usually they come from assistant chiefs who got good experience and good education before they had to step up to the chief's role. One of the chief's jobs is to educate their assistants. Do everything you can to prepare your assistants to take over in case you are absent. A properly educated assistant chief can do almost everything the chief does, relieving the chief of a lot of work and letting the chief focus on election quality in their polling place. A good chief is actively involved in educating their assistants, looking for ways to help round them out and make sure they have all the skills they need. As mentioned previously, we have an EO evaluation form. To use that form properly, chiefs need to observe their EOs, not only for the specific skills of performing a specific role, e.g. greeter, check-in officer, etc., but also for the soft skills, working with voters, working with other EOs, general attitude. Make mental or physical notes during the day about each EO to simplify completing EO evaluations. Chiefs are recommended to keep a copy of their evaluations from election to election to facilitate future education focus for individual EOs on their team and assigning EOs to specific roles in the polling place. If from one election to the next, it is hard to remember what an EO's capabilities are. If you have your last review of them, you'll know what you thought at the time the election ended. Many of the forms that went over in this presentation are rarely or effectively never used, but you should know about them just in case. There are more forms in common use in the polling place. For example, the ID confirmation statement, the request for resistance forms, and the provisional ballot envelopes. Some tasks in the polling place have to be done by the chief, and among those are swearing in everyone and conducting performance evaluations. Other tasks the chief should avoid doing as they provide oversight to the entire process.